connection and so on, right? That's
Yeah, if everybody can turn on their cameras, I think it would be great to speak to everybody at the same time. If you can, please go for it.
hi.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, guys. Hi. Okay, so we are live on YouTube. So do you think we can start, Vivek?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. So I just want to start off by saying thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, all four of you. It's truly a pleasure and an honor because we really haven't done this before. This is the first time we tried a mediation competition clinic, and you've all been so nice to give us your time. So thank you so, so much. For all the participants, I'd like to give you a quick round of introductions about who is going to be speaking today. So first, I would like to introduce to you Dr. Andrea Hartman-Pirodeau. I hope I said that correctly. Andrea has been in ADR for the last 12 years. She's a certified international mediator. She's a trainer specializing in leadership, intercultural teams, team building, strategy processes. And she's received her doctorate for her research on the effects of emotions and conflict resolution, and has worked on many different international peace mediations. She's an author and a university lecturer, and she's accomplished all of this while running an amazing company called Consensus GmbH, which we will be talking a little bit about later. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for this introduction, and it's really a pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you. We also have with us today Ms. Purvi Satija. She's actually an alumnus from NALSAR. She graduated NALSAR in 2013, and then the outstanding student she was, she went on to pursue her LLM from Harvard University, and that is obviously one of the most prestigious universities in the world. Not one of the, actually the most prestigious university in the world. And currently she's working as an associate in the International Arbitration Group in Paris with one of the best law firms in the world, which is White and Case. And she has actually personally mentored me a couple of times in my competitions, and she's extremely helpful. And she has always coached a lot of the NALSAR teams, and they've always went on to perform extremely well in these competitions. So thank you so much, Purvi, for being with us today. And we're extremely honored to have you here.
It's my pleasure, really. Thank you.
So actually, Purvi is going to be coaching my team for CDRC Vienna. We've never spoken. I had no idea this was happening. And then Karthik, one of my teammates, told me that she's going to be the coach. So that was a really nice surprise. So next we have Mr. Jonathan Rodriguez. I'm happy to say that he's a very good friend of mine. We've met multiple times in Paris, in Delhi. He conducted an excellent mediation and arbitration competition through PACT, which he co-founded in 2018, called Advocate Maximus. And then we met again at ICC Paris, where he was a coach. He's been phenomenal in the mediation world. Right now he's working towards, he's an advocate of mission mediation, which is something that you can see him using as a hashtag on all of his LinkedIn posts. So while running a business, Jonathan also completed his master's from the University of Strathclyde, and he started teaching at MNLU Mumbai, and currently he's one of the lead mediators at Camp Bangalore. So Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Vivek. And I'm not quite sure how the dog feels about me in that picture, but yeah, I seem happy. Thank you so much for having me.
And also the youngest student on our panel today is Mr. Yashasvi Raj. He is currently in his third year at NALSAR University of Law, and his list of achievements is so long that it will be hard to cover all of it right now. But he has won so many ADR competitions like the NUJS mediation competition. He has been a semi-finalist at NLS NMC, silver medalist at International Mediation Singapore, winner of NLIUI and ADR, and also was with me in one of the recent ICC Asia Pacific competition. So we're so happy to have you here with us. He's also the convener of the ADR committee at NALSAR at present. And I think his love for ADR is ever growing. And we're so happy to have you here with us, Yashasvi.
Thank you so much for the kind words, Swini. And thank you for having me. Really looking forward to this and excited to be the youngest here.
All right. So with that, I think we should just jump into the discussion, unless anyone has anything quick to say, or are you all ready to go? Okay, cool. So we wanted to talk to you a little bit about your first experiences in the ADR field. What do you think you did correctly? Do you think there's anything that you could have done better in your career? I mean, of course, we all have that opinion that something could have gone better, but we'd love to hear where you started out. So Andrea, if you could go first, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. My journey into mediation started when I was negotiating in a position of a council, actually, a communication council that I was at this time. I studied communication science and then I became that. And I had a negotiation with the ministry in Germany and another partner, which was a big broadcasting in a company. And I was appointed to be the negotiator from the side of the state ministry. And I felt okay, I would say, in this role when everybody was nice to each other. And then when the first tension arose and when there was definitely like interests that were not on the table, when unclear situation came up, I felt that I was sweating and I got nervous about it. And afterwards I told myself, okay, what could I have done better? What would be my role? How could I improve my interaction in order to find even better solution or to help the parties to find even better solutions? And I wasn't sure. I was looking around, what can I do? And I didn't want like one day of a negotiation seminar or like a 2 days workshop of something. I wanted to find something profound that would take me further in this field. And this is why I studied, beside of my job, mediation. And first, I didn't want to be a mediator or actually only work in this field. I just wanted to take the skills and use it for my job that I was doing at this time. And I just fell in love. It's how it is. I fell in love with this subject. There is so much. It is about psychology. It's about law. It's about negotiation. It's about communication. It's complex. I found it was wonderful. And then I slowly shifted my career that I had at this time as a counsel to companies and ministries in Germany towards mediation. Yeah, I would say these were my first steps.
So you were a lawyer, that means you were basically representing all of these people?
No, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not I studied mediation on the faculty of law in Germany, but I'm not a lawyer. At this time I was I studied originally sociology and communication science, and I was appointed, but I wasn't appointed, I think, for my studies as being a negotiator in these cases. It was because I was leading some projects for the ministry before they knew me, and also the other party knew me, and so they agreed on having me as a neutral person in this negotiation process. I wasn't even trained for that. It was kind of like a, they thought I could do it, and it went okay. It went okay. It didn't, it finally they found a solution, and I have to say they were in general very friendly to each other, but it could have been gone, I think, a lot better if the negotiator or the person who led it in this place, namely me, would have been trained in other skills like mediation,
Right,
for
right.
example.
No, but I asked that question because that's what I love about mediation and mediation competitions, because we are, as lawyers, especially going to a school like Nalsar, we just meet lawyers. We don't have any other friends, and it's really nice to meet people that aren't from that field, and it's just an amazing experience for me. So thank you. Purvi, would you like to go next?
Can I, sorry, can I
Yeah,
just
sure,
say to
sure.
the lawyers, just one little remark. I think it depends a lot where you practice mediation. In Germany, for example, we also have lawyers who are mediators, but actually parties often ask for mediators who are not lawyers, because they have the feeling if lawyers are involved in the mediation, and this is not for commercial mediation, this is more for workplace mediation, for example, then like right away there is something about law and court and, and so on. So they say we don't want a lawyer to be a mediator, but this is very special to the place where you practice mediation. This is very special to Germany in this case.
Right. Thank you so much. Purvi, would you like to go next and tell us a little bit about how you started off?
Sure. I think that's a nice little segue, because I basically did the opposite of everything that Andrea just set out. I started out as a dispute resolution lawyer in a firm in India, very aggressive, very, litigant mind frame, very my client is right and we must win at all costs. And then kind of had a radical transformation. And I think I echo Andrea in that mediation and negotiation training, and studying that subject can be really life-changing. And my first exposure to interest-based dispute resolution kind of happened during my LLM, where I trained as a mediator, I trained as a negotiator. I took a lot of courses on mediation, wrote my thesis on mediation, studied collaborative law, and started volunteering my time to co-mediate disputes in courts in Boston over the time that I was there. I think that has really been perspective changing in a lot of ways. Not only do I think that it makes me a better lawyer, but in a lot of ways, I think it makes me a better person. Because you learn to actively cultivate skills like empathy, to really listen to the other side, and to really practice active listening in your day-to-day life. I think it makes you better at interpersonal relationships, and just overall, I think it has been extremely life-changing for me to be delving into ADR and interest-based dispute resolution. And I do think that one of the regrets that I have from my time in law school, where ADR was not super big, everyone was, again, like in typical lawyerly armed up fashion, very much into moot court competitions, and that was kind of the flavor of the season. There were not that many opportunities, either nationally or internationally, for participating in interest-based dispute resolution, just exploring that field. And I'm really, really glad to see that is fast evolving and changing. And I wish I had those kinds of opportunities, including a mediation clinic of this sort. So.
Thank you so much. Jonathan, would you like to tell us how you started off in ADR?
Thanks, Vivek. Yes, so I think my journey was more from an accident. I was emceeing a rock band concert back in college, and my principal thought that, okay, this guy can speak. So let's send him for a client consultation competition. And we happened to finish runners up there, and that's how it began. But I think I was pretty much, and I've told this story to a lot of people, that I was very much lost in law school because I came from a psychology background. I did my bachelor's in psychology, and then I worked for as a journalist for around 5 years with the Times of India. And through all that, someone told me that, I argue a lot, so I should go to law school. I think many of us have heard that. and trust me, that's true. And so, and that's there I was sitting in law school, attending classes and thinking, no, this is not my place. I know I argue a lot, but this is not my place, because it was not really working out for me until I discovered mediation, and until I discovered that you don't really need to argue to get to the point, and you don't really need to argue to get a resolution or find justice. And what I like calling today is collaborative justice. Oh, okay. I just got a notice saying that it's been recorded. So yeah, I think that was the starting point. And then CDRC Vienna was happening that year for the first time. And we were invited as one of the colleges. And I had never traveled outside India, so I said, let's go for it. I got myself acquainted with the mediation process. I watched a couple of YouTube videos, and there was I competing with the rest of the world in Vienna. I had no clue what was going on, but I just had this confidence in me that I knew what I was doing after watching a few videos. And I think what really helped me out was the feedback that I received from my assessors. I think I grew as a mediator during that competition. I think I did 4 rounds, and at the end of 4 rounds, I was like, that's it. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I remember a senior mediator telling me that, hey, this is just a competition. But I knew that was the thing. I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I think the feedback that I got, and that's why, and Vivek knows that over the last 5 years, through PACT, we have done so many competitions in India. And there was one thing that was always important to me, and that was that whoever is assessing a round has to be very serious about the feedback, because that's made me who I am today. And I remember their words. I have their feedback still on printed paper with me in my files. And those folks who gave me feedback, I'm still best friends with them. They've been my mentors today. They're the best friends in the mediation world. I've kept in touch with them, most of them at least. And I think it's they always remember the things that I did there, and the stunts that I pulled off, and somehow they liked it 5 years ago. There's still a legacy at CDRC Vienna. If you go and ask them what did Jonathan do in the first year, they'll tell you the stuff that I did there. But I think that's what helped me realize that, okay, this is what I want to do. I came back, I started a mediation organization, but I remain grateful to those folks in that first competition that really let me go out there and test this for myself. I remember after I lost the semi-final round, and this is something I like sharing with folks who go to competitions. I lost the semi-final round, and I was very, very depressed, because everyone thought that I would win, because I was doing all this kinds of inexplainable stunts as a mediator. I would do all kinds of I would draw things, and I would use props and all kinds of other things. I even played a Beatles song during one of the rounds. So everyone thought that this guy is going to somehow win this competition, and I didn't make it through for a very ethical reason, that I messed up on a particular reason during the round. But I remember during the ceremony after that, the prize distribution ceremony, there was this particular mediator. Her name was Judith Ettig. I still remember, and she still remains a good friend. She's from the US. So herself and another gentleman named Alexander Simoes, some of you might know him. I'm sure Andrea knows him. Alexander Simoes from Brazil. They took me around the entire room, and they introduced me to all the mediators there, and they told me that this guy is going to make it big in India someday. So why do I wake up every morning and keep doing this? It's because of them, because I think they saw something, and then I made myself believe that there was something there in me, and I worked hard on it. So yeah, I think it's the competition is great, whichever competition you go to, and you have to go there to win. You should always go there to win, but you cannot get dejected by the result. And that's just a part of it. And I know it's difficult, because you're always going there to win, but you have to exploit everything about that competition, not just the trophy. And that's my message to you, I think. I know I've kind of deviated from the topic, Vivek, but yeah, I'll end now.
No. I mean, I think your judges and all of them gave you the right feedback, because clearly you are making it big in mediation in India, and everyone at Nalsar knows your name. So at other law colleges, wherever you go, MNLA, I'm sure it's just a force to be reckoned with. So thank you for sharing that story. It's pretty cool. So Yash, what has your experience been in ADR?
So I was a textbook enthusiastic first-year student who wanted to do extracurricular activities in my first semester. and selection ADR was the first event which popped up on the calendar. So I thought, why not give it a try? And a fun fact is that the first competitive round I sat in, Jonathan was my judge in that. And it's true that he did give amazing feedback, which I carry with me till this day. So yeah, I was introduced to ADR in a competitive setting, and through being part of the process, the entire competitive settings, and just being there, realizing how important communication played a part even in simulatory settings, and the problem solving aspect of it addicted me to the exercise. I realized that this is something that's really fun, also engages a lot, and presents a lot of challenges in trying to reach a certain place from where we entered the room. And I think that's what led me to just loving this entire activity. And uh, I think that it's something that I really want to, I wish that this is part of my life somehow, if not in a completely ADR way. I'm just trying to make sure that anything I do in my life has a problem solving aspect to it, because that makes me feel great about just being someone who can help in reaching a solution or trying to reach a solution for someone I'm representing either way. So that's that. And I think as youngest on the panel, there's not much I can speak about what to do better and where I've messed up yet. So I leave that to the other three esteemed panelists and the weight of their experience.
Thank you so much, Yashasvi. And I think that was really helpful for, we have a lot of first years participating here with us today. And that is a very important thing for them to know about how to start off in different competitions. And what I noticed was in the last question that everybody had some change of heart, which made them move towards mediation and making them feel that um, problem solving or dispute resolution is much nicer than just continuously fighting for your client, whether you feel it is right or not. And adopting the cooperative strategies is also quite helpful. So I wanted to ask you that, do you have any different war stories as such, or do you have any particular story which made you feel that, okay, mediation is a much better way of going towards dispute resolution than litigation or going to court? Or do you have any stories, something about how you use these skills in different aspects of your life? Andrea, do you want to go first?
I have to think about it. There is so many stories. What is best to share? I mean, it's in general, I always feel after a mediation, um, when the room fills up in peace. That sounds a little bit spiritual, but it is like this. People are so relieved when they actually really get over their conflicts. And I am a mediator. I'm going pretty deep. You mentioned that I did like a thesis about emotions in mediation, and I think that it's really important to involve emotions in mediations and to talk about emotions in mediations, even in workplace mediations, even in commercial mediation. And I be sometimes a little bit hard on my on my clients in not letting go, in asking them again and again and what it is about and how do you feel and where do you feel it. I even ask to show me in your body, where do you feel that emotion now? Is it more here? Is it in your stomach? Are you dizzy when you think about it? Is your heart beating? And so we create an understanding. And there is so many stories when people came in stressed and under tension and also like suffering from having this conflict pain, I call it, where where it's all over their mind. They can't get like away from it. They can't concentrate on their work anymore. They lose motivation. They can't sleep at night. They are not happy even if they are at home with their families. And then they go through a process like this, and finally they find peace with the other, but also within themselves. And that is like, I can't describe this feeling if you are like, and I'm not involved in their conflicts, of course, but it's a gift also for for a mediator to see that, only to see that, to see how this works out, the technique works out. And it does most of the times. I would say like the success rate of mediation is so high. And why is that? Not because we are particularly good mediators, or it is because people who come to mediation, who decide to come to mediation voluntarily, already did the biggest step on this path. They have already the mindset that they want to go through this process and actually find a good solution. So it's the table is set. And then we just have to have a very good, intensive, tasty, and flowered dinner together. This is my picture of it. And this is how I see it. It wasn't really a war story, was it? But it was, it was maybe the opposite of it. Yeah.
No, it does make sense that we spoke a lot about managing emotions in a particular mediation session in the last 3 days. We were talking about how to be an emotional thermometer in the room, especially as a mediator, and it's extremely important to make parties feel comfortable and keep emotions in a check so that everybody is trying to come to a proper agreement, and that is also happening calmly rather than being aggressive about it. And Puri, what do you have to say about this?
I think there's an emotional aspect to it, definitely. In my day-to-day work as an arbitration lawyer, I see a lot of deterioration of relationships, and I think a mediation often has the opposite impact of repairing relationships. And so I feel that it lends itself particularly well where there are ongoing relationships, and some of the disputes that I've mediated, for example, had to do with landlord-tenants disputes, or employer-employee disputes, where you can't where the means of the dispute resolution can't be such that it deteriorates that relationship, because that dispute is not the end of that relationship. It's not a commercial agreement where if it doesn't work out, you go and walk your separate paths, because you likely are still bound by finishing your term of the lease, or finishing the rest of your employment contract. So I think in those situations particularly, I've seen mediation serve a very, very helpful purpose in sort of repairing relationships by just getting people to talk to each other across the table. Because when you get into litigation mode and you get lawyers involved and you start communicating through, legal proceedings or legal notices, or just, pages and pages of pleadings, you're kind of losing out on the human interaction element of it, and you're ending up getting more and more entrenched in your position because you are not really interacting at a human level. So I think in that sense, I've seen mediation have a very effective use in situations which require repairing of relationships, or where that may be a consideration. At a personal level in my life, there was a revelatory moment that I had, because while undergoing training as a mediator or as a negotiator, you often do role play situations. So you in that process, you end up evaluating and having to think about, oh, okay, in this team, am I going to be the client, or am I going to be the lawyer? And that's going to be a similar sort of strategic decision that you're going to be taking if you participate in any of the mediation or negotiation competitions, right? Where you're going to have to think about, as a person, as your personality, where does that fit? Do you fit better as an advocate, or do you fit better as a client? And in that process, it became very clear to me that I was so much better at representing someone else's interests and advocating for someone else. But I really struggled when it came to articulating my own needs and my own requirements, or what I wanted. And so that was a very interesting insight that I got through training in ADR, which has been quite interesting to try and challenge in real life. So in my life, at work or in interpersonal relationships now, when I find myself in a situation where I'm struggling to articulate or, fight for my own self or represent my own self, I tend to go back and remind myself of that training and, how to be an effective advocate for yourself. So in that sense, I think it's been really, really interesting.
I think
Thank you
that's
so
one
much.
thing that I really love for everyone that's attended our workshop to take away, that your skills that you learn, through mediation, they're not just for competitions or for your job or for anything. They really teach you a lot about yourself, and it's. I've had a very similar experience to what Purvi was saying. So I just hope that all of you listen to that, and I hope it resonates with you in some way.
Vivek, I just
It
want to
definitely resonated with me. Yes, Jonathan, go ahead.
what you just said, because I think I have on the same page with both Andrea and Purvi, and I'm sure that Yash will also approve of this, that I think as professionals who are in this field of conflict resolution, and we're all training to be lawyers, and we want to be all collaborative lawyers at some stage, I think it's very important for you to be comfortable with your own emotions first. If you're not comfortable with your own emotions first, then you are not going to be able to handle the emotions at the table. Either as a mediator, that's even worse. You've got to deal with two sets of emotions, not two sets, plus they're lawyers, so just keep calculating. But even if you're a negotiator, you have to still deal with the emotions on the other side. And therefore, I think it's very important for us as we are training ourselves. Some of us are in first year of law school, and if you're listening to this in the first year of law school, you've got 5 years to train yourself. So in 2025, you are going to be a really good lawyer, and you need to spend time doing that. I wish I had more time doing that, because, I think in 2015, when I started out, I used to regret most of the things I did after I did them. And I don't do that anymore. Like, I think 99% of my, I would say, actions in 2015, I would regret it at the end of the day when it was time to go to sleep. But I don't do that anymore. It's probably just down to 5 to 10% now, right? Because I think I've become a more reflective person, where I respond to situations more than I would react to situations then. And, going back to those days, people ask me, do you regret it now? Do you feel bad about it? I was like, no, I accept who I was then. And when I look at it from today, it's different, but I accept who I was then. I was a different person then. I am a different person now. But that journey occurred to me, I think, a bit late. I wish I was told this when I was in the first year of law school or first year in college, because we do everything else. We study barracks, and we study, precedents and this and that. We're getting ready to move. We're getting ready to argue. We're strategizing. We know everything, but we're not really taking care of ourselves as people. And when we go to the table, especially in the mediation world, this is not a courtroom or an arbitration where you're talking just to the arbitrator and just to the judge. The only person you need to impress is the judge, the arbitrator. Here, you're actually having a conversation with the other person. And if you cannot control your own emotions, you will not be able to handle the other person's emotions. So I think that's something that I would really want you guys to take away. Spend time before you go to a competition. Prepare yourself mentally. People have different ways of preparing. I knew a friend who used to listen to rock music before going into a negotiation round. I was like, whatever works for you. And then I asked him why. And then he said, my weakness is that I'm very accommodative as a person. So he was trying to get his competitive edge up by listening to rock music. It was getting him some kind of adrenaline rush. So I don't know, you need to be humble with your weaknesses and strengths and see what's really. If you're too competitive as a person, then please don't listen to rock music. You probably want to listen to a bit more meditative music to just get relaxed and make sure you have the right temperament in the room. But yeah, I think that's very important, the whole emotionality part, and the fact that you have to get comfortable with your own emotions first, especially in the field of mediation and negotiation, because it's going to be very crucial to what you do. I always ask people, do you realize how worked up you get in a competition, even though you're actually role playing? You're role playing. You're literally having an out of a body experience there. You're taking on a different role for 1 hour, and yet after 1 hour you come out of a round. Tell me this is not true. You come out of a round in any competition, you see people exhausted. They'll be like, that was crazy. Why? Why did you get so exhausted? It was a role play. Why? Because we as people, we cannot. We're getting into that emotion. We're getting into that, into that, trying to empathize into those shoes. And I think the most comfortable people in competitions, the ones who win it, you'll see the ones who reach the semis and finals, are the ones who are the most comfortable in themselves. And here's a compliment out to both. I've not met Swini in a competition before, but I've seen Vivek and I've seen Yash, and I know that these folks probably advance in the competitions that they have conducted because they've been the most genuine, honest with who they are, and that comes across even to the judge who's sitting opposite you. Just be who you are, be comfortable, and I think that's what's. I don't have time to look at your skill set in that 1 hour, but what really comes across is that confidence, and and that's something that's very important. And you can only do that when you have good control over your emotions, at that point of time. So yeah, something that you guys can work on, I would say. It just helped me tremendously.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of understand what you were trying to say because I've been in such situations and rounds. And Yash, do you feel very calm and happy once you leave a round and you feel the sigh of relief?
So of course, it's about. I heard this from a very renowned mediator in Asia. It's about being calm in the chaos, and I think just being calm in the chaos is where, personally, as a person, I thrive, and so that really helps me enjoy the activity. And thanks, Jonathan, for the kind words. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I wanted to now speak a little bit about what happens in, like, since we know that ADR is evolving so much, and speaking about Nalsar itself, like ADR wasn't as big only 5 or 6 years ago in Nalsar, and ADR committee in itself was formed, I guess, in our second year. We're currently in our fifth year, just to clarify. So ADR is developing continuously and it's growing at a really fast pace from what I can see. What do you think is like the most exciting bit about ADR these days? Of course, speaking about pandemic, things are getting online, but also what do you think, what are the new developments in ADR which you feel with something you could go into? Like these days, I had a lot of questions in the last few days that how to build a career in ADR and where do you see ADR going? And I thought you guys would be much, much, much more equipped to answer that particular question. So where do you see ADR going and what do you think are the most hot topics in ADR these days? Andrea?
It depends a little bit where you have the focus on and where you are located. I think that is absolutely right that for you guys, especially in India, like there is a market that is growing. Everything that I follow up, the speed, the regulations that you as law students have to do mediation, also like some kind of mediation training and so on, that was reported to me, is very interesting, and I think it's fantastic. In Europe, it is a little bit slower, I would say. And this depends in Europe, and you can't generalize this. I'm just running a European project about mediation within Europe. And we have 9 partners from 7 countries. And all the countries are different. So you have mandatory mediation, for example, in Italy since like a while. You have it new in Lithuania, where it just came this year, where, of course, if it's a mandatory mediation, then, of course, there is a lot of more traffic, I would say, in this field and more awareness about it and more cases and more work for mediators. We're in Germany, for example, this is really small. It's growing, but it's not comparable to a speed that other countries or other continents have. We are also not, unfortunately, not part of the Singapore Convention yet, and so on. So the fields of mediation and ADR, I think, differ a lot from how it is connected to the legal systems. And there I see a key, and I hope that this development that we're seeing in different parts of the world, that will go on and create like a bigger awareness, and not only as a possibility for access to justice, but also like as a possibility in leadership disputes, in leadership methods, in family disputes, in all kind of not legal fields to become more visible. that is what I'm hoping. And and you said yes, Corona and the digital mediation. I indeed think that this is a changer. It's a game changer, at least for us. There was hardly any in Europe, hardly really any online mediation before. Yeah, we were talking about it, but we were not really doing it. There was because of course distance are not that far, so we traveled around and did mediation, and now people have another mindset towards digital conferences as we're doing it here. Like, they are more used to it. And for myself, I'm doing a lot of online mediations right now, and I hope I can go back to present mediation when COVID is over. But I learned to take online mediations not only as a different platform to conduct mediations, but actually as a technique. For me, a hybrid mediation will be hopefully my standard soon, because I see some advantages in the progress if we are online. Think about it. Just think a moment about this, and this is also maybe interesting for the competition to think about it. If you have face-to-face mediation, usually in the first phase of mediation, people are in conflict, and they tend to not look each other into the eyes. They tend to look towards the mediator, and they talk to the mediator. So your job as a mediator is to get them engaged, to get them like in the process, that they have a conversation with each other. When we are online, we are looking each other in the eyes. I know it's virtual, but from the beginning. And I have the feeling that alone this, like only this feature, that this creates a bigger cooperation. And so we can use it. I'm going to use it. I'm going to build in some online sessions in face-to-face mediation just for a method, not only just a different platform.
Thank you so much. Yes, online mediation has become such a trend these days because out of necessity, of course. And it's very important on how you adapt to it, because the way you mediate or present yourself, say in a competition or even in real life, is much, much, much different in the online version. And how you conduct yourself, should you move too much or not? So such small things are also important. And speaking of mandatory mediation, I've seen a lot of the developments in the same field in India as well. There are proposals going around. Definitely, I read a couple of articles on the same in India, but I wanted to know, Purvi, like, how do you see ADR developing in India? Especially, you see Nalsar grow from a complete non-ADR place to a much, much more ADR savvy place. So what do you think about it?
I think Jonathan might be much better placed to comment on mediation in India. I do not believe I have any credentials or any kind of experience with mediation in India. In all honesty, the kind of development that I think I have some experience with mediation in the US market, and I agree with Andrea that the geography really matters, because the reason why you have a lot of buy-in for mediation and ADR processes in general in the US is because you have detailed guidelines. Every state has requirements on how what it means to be qualified as a mediator, what kind of training goes into a person becoming certified as a mediator for each and every state in the US. And that obviously builds a lot of trust and faith in the system, and not having any kind of regulations or any kind of framework in place for a mechanism like mediation. I'm not on top of what the latest developments in mediation in India are, but under the Civil Procedure Code, there's a very basic framework for what mediation should look like, but no subsidiary legislation or proper framework to really inform that process or operationalize that process. And so every high court has a mediation center, but kind of does everything in an ad hoc way, the way they want to go about it. And I think that really takes away from getting buy-in from users of the system, because what you don't know what you're buying into, right? And mediation is such a broad term. So in one way, the kind of resolution that you've had culturally in India with panchayat systems, and that kind of mechanism already in place, you could consider that mediation. But the term is such an umbrella term that it could encompass a lot of different kinds of processes. And even within mediation, there are so many different kinds of schools of thoughts. There's facilitative approach, there's transformative mediation, there's that term could mean so many different things in terms of process, that until and unless you have a framework in place that defines what that process looks like, it's going to be really, really hard to get people to buy into the system and start using it. And I think that's kind of a key difference that I've seen in the US, because the framework is so well developed. There are so many guidelines into what constitutes mediation, what kind of training that you need, that there's a lot more buy-in. A lot of people want to use mediation as a means of dispute resolution, because they know what they're getting into when they say we want to mediate a dispute, as opposed to often in India where it's difficult to even understand what you're getting into when you say I want to mediate a dispute. So I think I think Jonathan is a lot more qualified to comment on this than I am.
I'm just going to go for it very quickly, Purvi, because I think there are a lot of the kids here who want to get down to more practical questions. But to Purvi's point about, do we have a proper law that we can follow and kind of hold on to and anchor to? No. Do we have enough of legislation that talk about mediation? Yes, we have around almost close to 24 legislations, by the way. If you go and Google it, starting from the Industrial Disputes Act, the recent ones like the Commercial Courts and the Company Act, and the Consumer Bill that came out recently. So you have a lot of this legislation that talk about mediation, but do we need an exclusive mediation law to make mediation work in India? Yes. Do we have a law to take care of mediation right now as it is? We are piggybacking on the Arbitration and Conciliation Act, which is okay. It gives us scope. We start the mediation as a conciliation. We end it as a conciliation. Then I have to get into a separate argument with someone saying, oh, if you're starting it as a conciliation and ending it as a conciliation, why are you a mediator? Then there's another half an hour that I spent to explain why. So will it save my time? Yes. Having an exclusive mediation law, it will save my time. It will save my time to have these random conversations about how we circumnavigate the system right now. So we do need an exclusive law for that. But right now we have the Arbitration and Conciliation Act to take care of us for now, for the time being, to start a private mediation. As we speak, I know that a mediation law has been drafted. It's in the process. It might be heading to Parliament this month. That's all I can tell you for now. But we hope that at least with the current government, which gets excited about new laws, we should have this passed by the end of the year, hopefully. And that will be a good thing that will happen to the mediation community. So, I'm excited about what 2021 is going to hold on for us. But I think the scope for ADR, and I just want to quickly end this point, the scope for ADR is going to be with the lawyers. It's going to be with you, this generation of lawyers who's really going to make it work. I keep telling some of my folks, they're going to reap the fruits of what we have been plowing in 2020 or 2025 or 2030. That's when all of you are going to graduate. That's when there's going to be a file on your table and you're going to say, no, this does not need to go to court. I am skilled enough to sit across the table with my client and get this thing negotiated. Okay, I cannot have a conversation with that other lawyer who's being a bit stupid right now. Let's get a mediator. That's how you're going to start thinking in 2025. And that's when it's going to work. So that's what I'm looking forward to if you're talking about the scope for ADR in India.
Yeah, and just to piggyback your point, I think in my limited experience in India, I've seen that commercial disputes are really interlinked with family disputes, with family businesses being run and all. And that's why the reason why India is such a good ground for mediation is because people draft commercial legislations through the lens of a rational person, a reasonable person that doesn't account for the emotion. But ultimately, tying this up with the last discussion we had on emotion as well, because commercial things in India have such a deep emotion interlinked with them because of having the family aspect over there. Like a lot of law firm disputes are now going to mediation And I think that's what makes mediation such a hot thing in India. It now finally becoming relevant to come at the forefront of dispute resolution.
I've actually never thought about that particular aspect with the number of family businesses that we had. I mean, even my cousins are right now like having this whole litigation thing with their company, and like, I mean, it's surprising that I haven't suggested for them to go to like mediation yet. But thanks for pointing that out. It's definitely something that people should look into. Because of the lack of time, I think I'd really like to focus on two main aspects. So this is a competition clinic, and because a lot of these guys are going to be moving into this whole online setup, do you have any tips for them dealing with, having to present yourself on screen, those kinds of issues? And the second part that I would like to focus on is whether you have some basic expectations as a judge when you look at a round. What are the things that you look at? What do you expect from them, whether it's in terms of a balance of managing your score sheet and keeping things realistic, or whether it's just about communication? And what are some of the most common types of feedback that you find yourself repeating again and again and again that sometimes just isn't drilled into your head? So that was a lot of questions. If you guys need me to repeat anything, please let me know. But Andre, if you could start off, that would be fantastic.
I start with the online settings in negotiation. Actually, the Paris competition next week will be my first one that I judge in an online setting. I can only talk to you as in terms of what is in generally, not only for competitions, but what should we do when we are in an online setting, or what is good for the other. So there is like, I don't know, and I don't know if you have talked about it. I don't want to repeat things that you already discussed, but I think like to make sure that you're very visible to other people. So we have in the negotiation, in mediation, it is really important to the eye contact, that I mentioned before, the facial expressions. And that is always also the downside of it, the critic of it. We don't have the full body language there. So make sure you give a little bit of body language. You have your expressions. Make sure the light is maybe like not too many shadows, so that people can see you, because then you can also play a little bit with it. It's like it's more or less like we do when we are live. So when I want to say something, I can lean forward a little bit. I can look at you in the eyes. I can ask a question. I can. It's good if you have a good sound quality. Then you can play with your voice. You can. I think that this is the frame, but it's very important. If this works, you have a good setup, you feel good, and there is no doubt about this. This things that I would say are the hardest in the online negotiation, if you can't really understand people or can't see them, or connection is going on and off. And then, of course, it is good to have some signs, to agree on some signs, how you pass the words. And you can even be creative. I'm sure that judges would like that. We, for example, I work with my students, and I have also online lessons with some signs that are, for example, I don't have something here, but it's errors, for example, and then we show it if somebody, if we are a team, they're doing also team negotiations and mediations and all kind of things, and if they want, for example, a lawyer-client relationship, and then they can like show something to the client and say, and explain that, be creative with that. I don't know if this is applicable in this kind of situation, but I think the more like you are creative and think about these conditions, the better it is. And what as a judge, that was the other question, right? What do I find myself telling people? And this is very important in the digital format as well, is I found myself telling them, listen more, listen even more, and active listening. And so now active listening is also about the body language. You all know the concept of active listening. Yeah, you listen to someone, and now you can't have, because you are muted, you can't have the and so you need to exaggerate. It is like you are on a stage. You are more, you have to act a little bit more than you would do normally in order to that the others receive the signals of it. So if you listen, and then you have to rephrase even more, even more. There is in this format, we need to make sure that we understand each other, and that I would say is the key point. And then there is a second point, but this is only for international. I don't know if you're talking about mainly international competitions. Is this
Right,
relevant?
we're talking about both, so it's
All
definitely
kinds of,
relevant, right?
yeah. There I suggest the parties, who with whom you are on the table, just have a look about the culture. Just inform yourself a little bit about the culture, about what you can find, about ways of negotiation. And I'm not saying that that there is, like we are still individuals. So this is, of course, I don't want to trigger a thinking of, okay, he or she is this culture, and this is why he or she behaves like this. But there are patterns. And if you know them, you are not that irritated. If there is something that is maybe a little bit out of your, I would say, comfort behavior, and then you can at least have the chance to think about it. Is there maybe something that is in the culture? For example, that we Germans are very direct. And then we say, why is that? I don't feel like this. Why are you doing this? So, and you might be a little bit, ooh, that is tough, but it is not meant to be like this. It's not angry. It's really only direct. If you know that, you can deal better with it. I think that's it.
No, that's actually really important advice. One of my previous coaches also told me that about international competitions, you need to keep in mind where your judge is from. So if you see that your judge is a European, then be a little bit more collaborative. Do not raise your voice at any point. But if you see that your judge is an American, then really go for it, and make sure that you squeeze them out for every ounce that you can get from them, and play hardball and things like that. And of course, I tried to maintain some kind of balance, but it's something that people have told me multiple number of times. But thank you so much, Andrea. One thing that I thought the three of you could focus on, or just proving me, anyone, is really portraying reality in a competition, because you guys have participated and you've actually been in these fake rounds, we could call, or like portrayals of reality. How do you find that balance?
I think it's hard, and acknowledging that it's hard is the first step towards working around it, because then you put in effort, you read the problem again and again, you familiarize yourself with what is the universe of the facts that you're confined by. But I think in addition to that, it helps to have some real world context. So I have judged some competition rounds where that often the problem deals with overarching themes like sustainability and development, or the rights of indigenous populations versus development. And I think it's, to my mind, I don't think you can have a mediation, even in a competition, divorced of the politics of that, wrestling with the real world impact that may have on people. So I think it's a tough line to walk, but I think it's important to focus your preparation on the universe of facts that you should read the problem several times. You should really engage with it. You should think about what your BATNA is, what the other side's BATNA is, and So when you read the problem, try and read it between the lines. So try and get at identifying the overarching themes that the problem setters are trying to get you to think about, and then see how they fit into the real world, you know. And just continuing with this example, you can't possibly have a mediation where you are supposedly representing a group of indigenous populations and then not really knowing what their interests are, or how acknowledging the fact that in negotiations where they're pitted against companies, there will necessarily be some amount of distrust that you will have to overcome. So just using that as an example to drive home the point that it's hard to find that balance, but I think with the right amount of preparation, I definitely think that it's possible to get there. And the solution to that, again, is just work really hard.
So what kind of feedback do you find yourself repeating to your students, whether as coach or as a judge?
I think I did already flag it, that just read the problem, spend a lot of time with the problem.
Okay.
And you know, just do practice a lot. I think in the online format, one of the things that you really need to make sure is have a lot of contingency plans in place. So you know, do a lot of practice, plan for what happens if, you know, my teammates' tech connection gets disrupted. Do I have it in me to take over and, you know, carry on from them, or take the baton from them, and always have a parallel line of communication. So, you know, with technology, that has become really easy to have a WhatsApp group on Parallel, and, you know, like kind of have a parallel line of communication, which doesn't make you look away from the screen necessarily to address or talk to each other. So make use of those tools, have a lot of practice sessions, plan for contingencies, and you know, just communicate with each other effectively at all points of time.
That's actually fantastic advice that I wish I had before going into that online mediation round. I think Swinny also had an issue where the teammate just dropped out of the blue. So contingency plans are very important. Jonathan, what advice do you have?
So I'm just going to make this quick. I have a few points that I thought I'll just you know, share with you. And I think this is something to do with also what you said earlier. How do you get out of that role play situation and still be yourself? And, you know, people know when you're faking it, when you're overdoing it, and you've got to keep it as natural as possible. And I think all of you will agree with me, including Andrea Purvi and Yash, that, you know, when it's what you say, the substance of what you say in that competition is the role you're playing. It's like if you're playing Alex, I'm going with a gender neutral name. If you're playing Alex, then what you say is basically on behalf of Alex, but how you say it is you. That's you, and and that's not going to change. So the style is you, the substance is that person, and therefore you can't get rid of that. You're literally playing a split personality there, and you've got to be comfortable with that, because you are saying things on behalf of Alex, because that's the role you're playing, and that's me as a judge. That's how I'm looking at it. What you're saying is with that role, and how you're saying is your personality, your style coming out, your confidence coming out, right? So I think it's very important for you to be comfortable and keep that in mind at all times. I'll give you a simple example of accents. You know, I think I was once in a competition where my co-counsel, I think it was the ICC, and opposite us was this girl from India who was speaking with an American accent, okay, or you know, a Western accent, and I think a more of an American accent, and my co-counsel kept getting angry with that point. Like now, trust me, we have spent the last 5 days preparing Batna interest, everything possible. Okay, we're all there. We're doing very well, but for some reason, this was pissing him off. And during the caucus, he tells me, "Listen, she's got a fake accent." I said, "I don't care. It's distracting you. Stay focused." And I said, "What if she doesn't? Maybe that's her natural accent. Maybe she grew up abroad. Maybe, I don't know. Just stay focused." Right? Because he was getting so agitated in the room while the mediation room. She's like, "She's faking it. That's a fake accent." I was like, "It doesn't matter." And you'll think this is silly. No, it's not. Trust me. You prepare for 1 week. You get all your Vatna and interest in place, and you go to the room and the silliest things will start annoying you. And if you
I wish I could go up against this guy, just throw him off his game completely.
Yeah. So be aware of this. Be aware of the get ready for all this kind of things, that these things are going to happen. It's going to take you off your game, and if you do not stay focused in your game, then you're going to lose it. Now, in a more practical sense, I think you need to budget your words, especially in online competition format. It gets a bit uncomfortable to interrupt, right? In a physical world, it's easier to interrupt, but it gets a bit uncomfortable to interrupt here because you lose the words. So I would say budget your words, budget your interruptions, and speak to score. If you are speaking, whatever comes out of your mouth, the judge would say, whoa, that was great. Let me list that down, a +1 for that. Like, try and as much as possible to speak to score. I mean, I'm getting a bit American in my style right now, but that's the way it is. It's a very problem-solving approach. You go out for it, but every time you open your mouth, you are opening your mouth to make an impression, right? At the same time, I'm not saying stay there and wait for your moment to pounce, because then you're going to get scored low for not opening your mouth at the right time. I'm just saying, be more aware. Don't be comfortable with silence. When you have to be silent, be silent. When you have to be opening mouth, make sure you're making an impact, right? And always keep track of time. I think that's the biggest feedback I'm always giving people. You are not keeping track of time. You're 45 minutes into the round, 15 minutes to go, and you have not started. You have not even started. We talk about information gathering, right? You're still stuck on an agenda 45 minutes into the round. What are you doing? How do you plan to get marks? How do you plan to get scored in this competition? Like, be aware of the time, be aware of what you're doing, have a strategy in place. And I think my last piece of advice would be, you have a plan which you have prepared with the best coaches around the world, and you're going to the competition. Never forget that they also have a plan. Be ready to be flexible. Okay, and I think that's something that we forget. We think we have planned this out. We have 10 pages of notes. We are being trained by Purvi and Andrea. They got to listen to us. No, they can be trained as someone as bad as me. And my whole game will be to derail your preparations. There are people who come to derail your preparations so that you lose track. I'm not saying they do it consciously. It's just maybe they're not trained as well as how the others are trained, and therefore they will derail your preparation. So be ready to be flexible. And I always say this too, even in real life mediations, and I'm sure Andrea and Purvi have this experience of sharing with a stubborn party by saying, try and give something to get something. Give something that's easy to give right in the start, or maybe halfway through. Get it going. Show that you're trying to make progress. As a judge, I will score you if I feel like you have tried to reach a solution. The solution doesn't matter. I know the Warsaw competition is different, but in most competitions, it's the means to the end that matters. So I think try and show that you're reaching a settlement, and that's the way you score, I guess. I don't know. I never won a competition, but I think I've been a great coach so far. So.
No, that was fantastic advice. I think even Andrea and Purvi in the middle, I think Andrea gave a thumbs up at one point, and Purvi was also nodding. And so definitely fantastic advice. So thank you for that. Yash, do you have anything to add on, especially with your perspective as a participant?
Yes, thanks, Vivek. I completely agree with what Andrea, Purvi, and Jonathan have said. That's really, really pertinent advice. And for me personally, I don't have the experience of judging and coaching as many competitions as the esteemed 3 other panelists do. So I'll just give a few tips that I feel make me comfortable in rounds, and what I've received as feedback in competitions. 3 quick points. The first one, please think the solutions through. And I remember when Purvi was coaching Swini and me for ICC, this is the main takeaway that at least I had from all the preparation, that completely think a solution through that may be creative enough to impress parties and the judges, but not so short-sighted that it turns out a little harmful in the long run. Because a judge will be able to call that out. A judge will be able to realize in that span of time whether this solution is going to be sustainable or not. So in the quest for being creative, make sure that it's something that is well thought through. This is something that Purvi taught us pretty well for ICC, so thank you for that. 2 points that really helped me as a participant. In online competition specifically, split your screen in 3 parts. One where the mediation is happening, One, as Purvi suggested, a channel of communication for WhatsApp or whatever works for you. The third part could be the score sheet. If the score sheet is in front of you, you don't need to look here or there to realize what you need to do. With the score sheet right there on your screen, you can just realize, okay, I've done well on this parameter. This is yet to be touched by me. So let's get on to this. This is something that needs to be scored by me. So I think having a score sheet having the score sheet in front of you really helps. And the third point I've realized in judging practice rounds only at university over 2 years, don't bully the co-mediator or the other party. Sometimes the other party or the co-mediator may not be as expressive or may not speak as much. And feedback that I've received after such rounds is taking a collaborative approach. Sometimes just asking the co-mediator to begin the summary rather than beginning it myself if the co-mediator has been a little silent, or asking the other party their perspective on whatever is being discussed before jumping into it ourselves shows a collaborative tone. And if that collaborative tone is permitted by the confidential information or your client's instructions, whatever you like to call them, try to follow that. Because again, as Jonathan said, if it's too solution focused, then maybe the bullying aspect comes into it as trying to squeeze the best deal possible. But by focusing on the process and not bullying the other party and just taking a collaborative pitch, I think that's looked better by judges than bullying. I'm sure Andrea, Purvi, and Jonathan might agree to this.
So much, Yash. All really fantastic advice. A couple of things, like when you were talking about the bullying part, I just, remember so many times when I just would take over the round completely and, not give anyone else a role to play. And I've been marked down for that. And I mean, initially it was just because I was annoyed that, nothing is happening the way it should. But it's really good advice to make the mediator do things rather than you standing up like I did, going to the board and writing everything myself. Yeah, it's not something that is appreciated for sure. But I mean, thank you so much for all the advice. We've had some insane number of questions in the chat as we've been talking. So I thought, I know we are crossing the time a little bit, but if it's okay with you guys, we could read out a couple of these questions and you could answer them at your own will. I won't really like call out anyone in particular. Should I start with the first question? Should I go like thumbs up?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. So the first question is, how similar is the role played by a mediator in a competition compared to real life? Does the mediator usually behave in an informal way?
Yes, please.
I have the feeling that it's very different, actually, because in my experience, mediators are more active. And I understand that in a competition, in order to be fair and not over, that parties are that you can judge, like the judges can have a judgment on the parties and not on the mediation style. Mediators are more passive, I would say, if not the participants are mediators, right? We're talking about different competitions. I'm focusing now that competition in Paris where there is the professional mediators and only the parties are students. There, I would definitely say that this is not the reality. It's more like a assisted negotiation, I would call it, what I see there. In competition where students are mediators, I would say this is more towards the reality, actually, to mediations than when the professionals are in mediation. Funny enough, but yeah.
Thank you so much. The next question is we have a couple of questions which are very similar. So I'm going to try and combine them into one. So the question goes, what is the thing that councils can do? So people usually find this hard to find the distinction between the role of a client and a counsel. Now, I get what the participants are trying to say, that counsels usually have to talk about the legal aspects, but in a mediation competition, you don't have too many legal aspects. So where do the counsels step in? That is a very strategic point to think of. Whether they handle emotions, that's what somebody asked, and whether what should they touch upon. So Purvi, if you could help us out in this.
I think one thing that you should do, as I was talking about earlier, is when allocating those roles, think about who has a better personality fit as an advocate or as a client. And again, this would turn on some self-reflection and analysis of, oh, am I better at articulating my own interest, or do I do better as when I'm representing or speaking on someone else's behalf? And you may have to take that assessment as a strategic call. The other thing in terms of allocating of responsibilities, I think it somewhat depends on the specificity of the problem and what it gets at. But if we were to talk about in a more general sense, I find it more effective when the articulation of interests and what is at stake for them comes from the client. And then the lawyers can try to then rein in the emotional aspect of it. But it just seems more genuine to me that the party himself or herself is talking about what is important to them, or why it's important, or why something is important to them. And then the lawyers play a more active role when it comes to, asking questions or trying to find the other party's interests, or if you come to a stage where you're looking at drafting or agreeing on the terms of the settlement, then lawyers can take a more, can drive that process. But in terms of, when it comes to communication, I find it being more effective when it's a client talking to a client, and then the lawyers can take over when things are getting better, or when the process is feeling stuck. So if that helps as a broad allocation of roles.
That does make a lot of sense. Even I've found this confusing about when should counsel step in and whether to overpower the client or not, and how to, maintain that restraint in a particular round. The next question we have is kind of interesting about, speaking from a competition perspective as well. It is by Sanskriti Saraf. She says, when and how walking off works in your favor. And I think this can be better answered from an actual mediation perspective as well. Jonathan, would you like to answer this one?
Yeah. What do you mean by walking off? Like saying that, is that for real, or is that just as a threat? It's like how we do it in India when we are bargaining. Andrea, just some context. When we go out bargaining in the markets, we'll be like, are you giving it for $100? And we'll walk 10 steps to the left and hope that the person brings it down to 100. If no, we go 10 more steps. So are we just using it as a threat, or are we doing it for real? I mean, I just want to know what's the context.
The context is sometimes I've participated in the competitions where the other side is not, willing to negotiate at all. They're stuck on their positions, and after trying multiple times, they are not budging. So I've wondered how walking off will work out in that situation. So that is the context.
Oh, very badly in the competition setting, because if you walk off, you don't get the judges to see you, right? And so you don't get scored. But I think let's get to the point. Why do you want to walk off? Because you're frustrated, and it's natural you're frustrated. So what I normally tell students to do is, acknowledge that and be honest with the other side and say, this is frustrating. It's been 20 minutes. We have reached out to you as best way possible. We have in fact proposed a few solutions. We've spent the last 2 days thinking of how we could make this work for you. And it's frustrating, to be honest. And then turn to the mediator, because sometimes we forget the mediators in the room and say, mediator, could you please help us out here? I mean, I think we have kind of exhausted our resources at this point of time. And could you help us out and get us some direction? I mean, just be very natural about it. Do not walk away. That's once again, that person trying to derail your game. You have a plan, as I said. Do not get bogged down by what the other person's doing. Try to find out why. And there might be a real reason. So get the mediator in. Call for a caucus. There are so many other ways you can do that. Andrea had a hand up, I think. You want to say something?
Just 1 second. A good question in this situation would be, what do you need from us to open up, to cooperate, really to the other party.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Can I just add? I think this may be something that Sweeney and Vivek might already cover or would have already covered. But I think one advice that I've often received is when you're feeling stuck in that situation, try and think of what would be an easy thing to agree on. And then that can build momentum to propel you forward. And sometimes it's just a simple process thing, So it could be an agreement as simple as, oh, should we just agree to list down what are the points that we've discussed so far on a chart, and just having that little agreement, you can incrementally build upon some other process related agreements. And sometimes you can see that just agreeing on some of the smaller things that may seem very immaterial can add and build momentum, and procedural agreements can sometimes propel the agreement on substance forward. So if you're feeling stuck, try and think super microscopically about what is the easiest thing to agree on, right? And then maybe use that to build momentum, and take it forward from there.
Yeah, that does make sense. We actually spoke about that in the last 3 days, but not as much in detail as you just mentioned. That if you have a triggering point or an issue, maybe come back to it a bit later. Talk about something else first. Try and make everybody a little bit encouraged to go through the mediation process and come back to it a bit later. Yeah, she was saying something.
Yeah, and very quickly, from a mediator's perspective as well, it's very important to at least take some charge in these situations so that the round is still in your control, despite it being autonomy, the party still having the autonomy with them. So possibly go for a caucus, or just ask the parties to take a deep breath. I've realized sometimes when that happens, that gives that 1 second of silence in the room, and that silence can really be used by mediators to take charge. And something I generally say in my opening statement is that even though it's voluntary, I urge the parties to trust the process for that one session before taking the decision to whether continue it or not. So in a way that avoids such situations of parties walking out of the room.
Speaking of caucus, we have another question in the chat box. How badly does it reflect on you if you don't call for a caucus in a negotiation or a mediation round? I think one of the judges who would be better equipped to answer that. Andrea?
If there is no caucus needed, there is no caucus needed. And it is for me, I think that this is what I wanted to suggest also before. What are mistakes that I have seen quite a lot is that on the score list there is make use of the mediator, and then you think, okay, use a caucus, or there's even on the score list the caucus, and if was it a good use of the caucus or something like this. And then you can see a lot of students having that planned before and then not flexible enough to adapt it to the actual discussion and situation, and then the caucus comes out of a sudden, and you as a judge, you don't understand why is the caucus, and then you would not giving a lot of points for it. So if you need a caucus, then you need it, and please first thing you do then is telling the mediator exactly why you were asking for a caucus right now. And you tell this the mediator, and you also tell this the judges. This is I think this is very important. But if there is no caucus needed, I absolutely appreciate it if there is no caucus in the competition. And actually, this is just one input on real life. This is really different in different cultures. We have in Europe, and I exclude Great Britain from that, we doesn't have such a caucus culture than it is in America. In Germany, for example, we hardly do any caucuses. We are not taught about caucuses in mediation training. Can you imagine? This is we're talking about talking to one or the other party in separate sessions, but caucus is not a thing because we think the best thing is everybody stays in the room and everybody hears what everybody says. So it really depends also a little bit what culture you are coming from. And personally, I absolutely there is more caucuses I have seen that I thought they were not necessary, that caucuses that I have seen where I thought, oh yeah, that was a good moment. I saw more like pauses for having how is it called in the competition? I forgot it. Like to have like a team gathering, or there is can you help me?
Yeah, I think it's just called a quick strategic break.
Yeah.
Strategic break or something.
Yeah.
These strategic breaks, I always, most of the time, find very, very helpful. If the situation's stuck and then there's a strategic break and then you can see there is fresh air, fresh energy, fresh motivation. Most of the time I found that even more helpful than some of the caucuses I have seen.
So Andrea, just back on that point quickly, back in India, we created a competition in 2019 where we actually had a separate scoring section just for the strategic break, where someone from the audience could come and sit with the clients and actually strategize with them from a different perspective. And if you used it well, you actually scored points for that. So we kind of created that space and that window for that, because as you say, that's so relevant. That actually makes more sense than having a wasted caucus, which is not productive at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know we've gone until 9:30 in India now. So if any of the panelists, if you need to leave or if you would be willing to stay on and answer a couple more questions, just let us know how you are on time.
Yeah, I'm good, Vivek. I've got my engagement postponed, so I'm good.
Okay, and Andrea, Purvi, you guys are good?
Absolutely, I'm fine. I have later on tonight, because for us it's afternoon.
Afternoon, right?
Yeah, another meeting, but for the time being, I'm fine.
Oh, that's fantastic, because we have so many questions. If you just open up the chat for a second, it's pretty cool. I guess the next question we can ask.
Sorry, I do have a hard stop at 5:30 because I have a client call at that time. But,
Sure.
Till then, I think I'm okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
No. Thank you so much. So I'm sorry, I'm scrolling a little bit. Right. So Pradyuman was very nice when he framed this question. He said good evening to all of the panelists as well. So I just like to read that out. His question is somewhere more related to ADR as a career and not only from a competitive perspective. When you look at the appalling case pendency in Indian courts, even with respect to civil disputes, do you think ADR as a dispute resolution mechanism can come out in the mainstream in the future and replace court proceedings to bring down the case pendency in Indian courts?
Yeah, I think I'll take that quickly. Vivek, I just realized I got to leave in 10 minutes. So the quick answer to that is yes, it will in time. We have 34 million pending court cases in India right now, which is ridiculous. A few years ago, our Chief Justice of India cried. He broke down and he said that we need more judges. Well, that's not the solution, right? We need more mediators at this point of time. We need lawyers who are ready to look into their files and say that. And I think it's not even just looking at the files. Many lawyers might think, okay, yes, this does not need to go to litigation, but they don't see the value in bringing it to mediation. So what we're trying to do, especially what I'm trying to do to camp mediation in Bangalore right now, is we're trying to bring value. We're trying to say that this can be a sustainable profession even by being a mediation lawyer. If you're going to charge your client 10 lakh rupees, that's 1 million Indian rupees, Andrea, over a span of 10 years back here in India, right? You're going to charge a client 10 lakh over 10 years. Take him to mediation, take her to mediation, get it sorted in say 6 months and charge the client 1 lakh rupees. Get rid of a happy client, get a new client in. Imagine the number of cases you're going to be, getting rid of and getting, I would say satisfactory win-win solutions for clients. So they need to start seeing that it is possible. And it's going to take some time, but I see it happening in 5 years from now. And that's why we're trying to bring in more and more role models to the picture, to the forefront, and say, these guys are doing it. They are actually making a profession out of this. It is possible. Why can't you charge your client the same amount if you had to, right? If it's all
Another
about
way
the
to
money,
put it is probably, Pradyuman, it's your responsibility at
yeah,
this point.
yes,
It's on you and your batchmates, my batchmates, to
absolutely.
change the way we think about it. As people that are graduating from law school soon. So that was fantastic. The next question is from Darshil Sakya, and he or she would like to know, can you elaborate a bit on the scope of mediation in the arena of sports? The reason why I'm asking this is because I have observed a few multi-million-dollar disputes in the field of soccer in Europe. So if you guys know anything about this, please let us know.
I did a mediation in a Bundesliga, like this is League One in Germany, sport club. Yeah, and it was mainly about intercultural. It was an intercultural mediation. It was they bought players from all over the world, I would say, and there was a lack of communication. And that led to different conflicts and prejudices and so on. And you could clearly see it. The outcome on the field was that they were not cooperating. You know that soccer clubs, in this on this level, they collect data about who is passing whom and who is playing with whom. So they could see from the data that there was something wrong. There was no reason why this person shouldn't pass the ball to this person, and it was that, like the topic was in the end, like intercultural differences and not understanding each other, not having the chance to talk to each other, not talking about emotions, and not talking about personal things apart from the field where they were playing. And that's it. It wasn't called a mediation, actually. I would say it was a mediation, but because of press and media and so on, it was a team process.
Yes,
That's really cool. Oh yeah, please,
yeah,
yes, go
sorry,
ahead.
I completely agree with Andrea here about understanding the other person, because being a sportsman myself from my school days and whatever I've done in college, I've realized that sometimes sports people really cling to a common set of values across any sport that they play. And having a mediator who has been a sports person in the past helps appreciate those values and emotions that possibly an arbitrator or someone sitting on the bench would not understand, having possibly not gone through that experience. So just having a mediator there with which acknowledges what a person's emotions are, which are specific to sports, and possibly a person not being able to acknowledge that, who doesn't come from a sports background. I think this distinction is what would really add value to sports mediations.
That's pretty cool. Thank you so much for the question, because I never thought about how it would work in this industry. So it was, learning moment for me. And it's true that intercultural relationships, it's just across the board, any industry. It's something that you need to. It's an issue that you have to overcome, and mediation is a fantastic way to go about it. So that sort of brings us to a close. I feel a lot of the questions that we had have been answered. If you feel like your question has not been answered, please send me or Swinny an email, and we will try to get our panelists to respond to you as soon as possible. They're all such lovely, wonderful people, as you come to realize just hearing them talk. And I can't thank you guys enough for making the time and staying for so long. It was truly a pleasure and an honor to have you guys with us today.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It really means a lot. And I'm pretty sure everybody who participated, who has joined this session today, gained a lot from this session. They learned a lot from you. And I hope that everybody is inspired enough to take up mediation in their future.
Thank you, Andrea, Purvi, and Jonathan, for being co-panelists here with me as the youngest on the panel. It's an absolute privilege to be with you here. And I've learned a lot from what you have said about the process and how it really pans out in life. And thank you, Vivek and Swani, for having me.
Thank you so much, everyone. It's been a great pleasure. I've had the additional pleasure of having a lot of very proud mother hen moments, hearing both Yashasvi and Sweeney talk, it was an absolute honor to be in the same panel as you, Jonathan and Andrea. And hopefully, in a non-pandemic world, we will see each other in real life. Hopefully very, very soon. And thank you so much, Vivek and Sweeney, again, for organizing it.
Thank you so much that I had the chance to be here with you. All these interesting questions from the participants and my panelists, my co-panelists with me was, and of course, the organizers of this chat. I would thank you so much. It was so interesting. And if you have some questions for me, don't hesitate to link me, for example, on LinkedIn, and just write me a message. I really try to answer everything and support you on your way to all your competitions or to your future as future mediators. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. So once again, I just typed out a message, but thank you so much for having me over, and thank you to Andrea, Purvi, and Yashasvi. I've been making my notes about whatever you're saying. I think it was a great learning experience for me myself, and thank you so much. Let's stay connected on LinkedIn. I got to hop off very quickly. Once again, thanks, guys.
Bye, Jonathan.
Bye. Thank you so much.
So one thing that I know we did conclude and we had all of that, but it's just coming back to me now that I wanted to hear a little bit more about your organization, Andrea. So what is the work exactly that you guys are doing? Because I have been following you on LinkedIn for quite some time now, but a lot of your posts are in German. So I tend to like sort of miss out on what's going on. And I did use Google Translate every now and then, but it's still not very perfect. So if you could give us a little bit of an idea, I'm very interested.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you're right, of course, because we're talking mainly to a German audience. For our mediation services, we're doing mediation services and we're doing mediation trainings. But actually, we running the first international mediation training, online mediation training in March. And we have trainers from all over the world, from India, and also 3 or even 2 or 3 trainers from India. And we have already a very diverse group. And this is the iamcampus.com. I don't know if you want to check it out. Is it okay if I write it into the chat?
Sure, please.
Yeah, because this is in English. And
just make sure that the 2 is to everyone so that everyone can view it.
Yeah, it is to everyone. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
And we are also and they're on LinkedIn. Sorry that we post English, and because we also do a lot of blogs around the world about mediation and so on, and we offer like actually a 120-hour mediation training, which are the standards of German mediation training. We have at least 120 hours, and this is an IMI certified training. So we took it to the international world, and we also established with it a fair price system because we had the feeling, this is my vision, is to have intercultural groups, because I think we learned so much from each other in communicating and the approach of things. And the problem always with international groups is that, of course, you have a price set for a training, and for one part of the world, it is kind of cheap and the other can't afford it just because of exchanging rate and purchase power and all these kind of things. So we adapted our price to purchase power of all the countries. So it's balanced, and we have already a group where we have people from Nigeria, from Switzerland, from India, from Iran, from the US. So I think it will be fantastic. So if you're interested in that, of course, you're very, very much welcome. But yeah, in this, and the other thing is really like we post a lot in German, so it might not be very helpful for you. Yeah.
No,
Thank you
for
so
me,
much.
particularly, it's very interesting because I'm graduating now. So these are the types of certificates and the trainings that I was, looking into,
Yeah.
and I thought a lot of people would be interested because some of the questions that you see on the panel are, how do you make mediation into a career? And this is probably one of the best, or this is the main step that you need to focus on, getting to be a certified mediator so that you can be hired at different private or organizations like Camp in India, or other like CIMI, which is in Singapore, or other places like that.
And if I may just plug in over here, because Vivek talked about being a certified mediator. In India, that can happen while you're still in your undergrad. You don't necessarily need to be hold a bachelor's degree to be certified as a mediator. So a lot of my friends from seniors from Nalsar and other universities have actually gone on to get certified. So if this is something that really interests you, there's a route to get that done even before graduation. This is something I may possibly be looking at in the next 1 or 2 years myself.
Just keep in mind that after you get the certification, you cannot participate in competitions. So participate as much as you can and then get certified.
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know this rule. This is interesting. Okay.
Can I
All
just
right.
also chime in? If you're generally interested in mediation, I would recommend that you check out IMI, and they have a Young Mediators Initiative. They're very active. They send out newsletters with opportunities that can help you cultivate your interest in mediation further. You can check. You can get more information on certification. You can get more information on the kinds of training or internship opportunities that may be out there. So if you're really interested in pursuing this field, I would really encourage you to check those resources out at IMI. And that are, if you want to read more theory, I'm going to do a bit of a business pitch. There's no better place to learn negotiation than with the Harvard Mediation and Negotiation program. There's a ton of resources out there that and a lot of training materials and things like that are published on their website. So I would really encourage you to check out. There's a lot of theory work that comes out of those labs. There's a lot of effort that goes into producing that material. And if you're interested in really engaging with this field at a theoretical level, I would encourage you to seek out those training materials.
Thank you so much, guys. That's, I think, one of the main things we have. Given the culture that we have in Indian law schools, mediation is truly looked down upon. Like even these competitions, people have said to me like, oh, what's the big deal? It's just, mediation. Like you just have to sit for 20, 30 minutes and it's all done. You pretend to agree and you just move on. But I really hope that this workshop gives you guys a better sense of what it really is, that there's so much that goes into learn, like Purvi was just saying, there's a lot of theory, there's a lot of concepts that you need to understand, and it takes 120 hours minimum for you to become a mediator in Germany. So clearly this isn't a joke, and it's something that you need to take seriously. And I really hope that this whole conversation, the last 3 days of instruction, has helped you to realize that there's real scope here, and that this isn't just something that we do for fun. Sweeney and I have been spending the last month putting this together because, yes, we care about the competitions, but we also want people to care about mediation as a career choice. And we hope that in some way this really encouraged you and has put you on, a good path. So I think we can sort of conclude everything on that bright note. Sweeney, do you have anything else you'd like to add? Okay. Sunni's having some technical issues. I'm so sorry I missed that message. But the panelists, again, thank you so much. If you have any concluding thoughts, we'd love to hear them before we say good night or good afternoon, wherever you are. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. We've all been talking for so long. So thank you, everyone. Bye. Have a nice night or the rest of the day, and we hope to see you soon. Keep sending us emails or connect with us on LinkedIn, and I can't wait to catch up with you all again. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye. Good night.
Bye. Thanks.
Goodbye.